Good day. Um, so let's talk about the economy. So the neoliberal agenda is dead, uh, and industrial policy now rules. Right now, the the president has put used tariffs as a blunt instrument. He needs to create an infrastructure that, if he's going to have industrial policy, it needs to be more fine. It needs to be more fine toothed as a comb. Um, if you had a value added tax, it's a blunter instrument until you talking exemptions. Just like you started talking exemptions, product based exemptions for tariffs. It's the same power, because the White House would eventually have to have the power. The executive would have to have the power to make the exemptions if you have exemptions, so that you the favored industries for consumers or for producers could be benefited. It's industrial and economic policy either way, unless you have a broad based VAT with no exemptions. Um, so you can probably kiss that one goodbye, though. It's too good a government idea, and eventually employee ownership works all this out, because what's happening with the American economy in the neoliberal agenda is that we make stuff overseas. The supply side as cheap as wages as low as possible, so the American consumers get more than their share, but not enough work. But we create debt so that the welfare system can, if it's working correctly, it's not, can raise enough up to make American workers whole. It doesn't do that now, and a lot of the country is suffering because of it, and has suffered. That's what Donald Trump was elected because of. That I mean, he has to eventually make to help the population, if nothing else, raise value added or raise the um, child tax credit, and he has to do it either by the government giving out checks, which his side doesn't like, or having companies. If you want to get rid of individual income taxes, um, which makes the IRS the pay, still the paymaster, just a different way than welfare, is to have a tax on employers that then gets credited out and collects no money, um, if it pays workers, um, with as a credit, an offset. So I don't know if anybody's seen my plan. I'll try to make sure they know what it is, because there's three ways to give money to families, and you have to give money to families on a child basis to really cushion the blow of tariffs. Because if you don't, then people will just be miserable, including Trump voters, especially Trump voters. Um, especially if he wants to, especially if they get rid of the idea that only brown people are the ones who suffer, um, and brown people are more and more voting for Trump. So he's got a constituency that he can demand stuff for. Um, but the neoliberal agenda to have cheap workers work for nothing or next to nothing, and be slaves for America, um, that's gone, or will be gone if they run it right. So yeah, I can see if he can get the Ways and Means and Finance Committee behind an agenda that trades tariffs for VATs, and the question is then who gets the power for the exemptions, if there are exemptions. Um, so we will see about that. So yeah, neoliberalism is essentially as dead as the people who voted for Trump want it to be dead. I mean, the old labor coalition was to have tariffs to then have benefit American workers. It's very everything that Hillary believed in. This isn't, because Hillary was a neoliberal. The Clintons were neoliberals. Obama was essentially a neoliberal. Bush was a neoliberal. Trump's not a neoliberal, in any stretch of the imagination. Now there's also the markets. The speculators are taking it in the shorts, in a bad way, because the market was overvalued. The question is which stocks are are in pain. If people were speculating on bad homes and bad loans, yeah, they're in trouble. People who and the there's two kinds of markets in finance. There's the long-term investment market, which holds treasuries, more treasuries actually, and the treasury ownership is more equal. It's the rich own, the top 10% owns like half of that debt, whereas in the and half of those assets. In the non-pension fund market, it's like 77%, almost 80%, is what the rich own. The really rich own half of it. The really rich own a quarter of it. I mean, I'm talking like thousands of people, not millions of people among ownership. Own, I estimate, a quarter of finance. That is probably going to change. And they're the ones who are losing money, but it's funny money. Again, stock holds lots of government and lots of blue chip because they have to. They have to do safe investments. The crap investments, though, are in the stock market, and they're just losing it. The program traders are losing it because with markets going down, they can't trade faster than the markets are losing it. So they're going to have some of these traders are they even the computers can't deal with this. So if everything's falling, their volatility models, and volatility means or they're predicting the curve based on the math and based on the fact that they can actually they're close to they're close enough to the lines that they're actually doing some technological insider trading. So which needs investigation and seizure of assets, frankly. But the people with pension funds, people say, well, what about the pension funds? The stock market. Pension funds don't own that crap that's dropping. Good. Let's an asset VAT is a better way to control or stabilize those markets. Tariffs are too blunt an instrument to do that on a long term to limit speculation. Right now, speculation is hurting. Okay, and good. The vast majority of people, I think most of the people. I mean, there's some wealthy. There's some people who are the wealthy poor, who they probably have the more stable assets. The ones who don't, they deserve what they're getting. If they're out for the returns and they're over 70 or over 60, and they're in index funds which hide the crap. Never do an index fund. It hides crap. It hides crypto. It hides mortgage-backed securities on commercial properties and rentals that aren't maintained well. It's crap. So the people who own crap because it has a good return, they're losing money. But I don't really care about those people. And neither does Trump. Neither do Trump voters, because they're not those people. The working class, the bottom 80%, own little, and the bottom 60% own nothing unless they're the wealthy poor. So the vast majority of Americans don't own stock, and they own very little because they're not unionized and not work for pensions or for pension companies. They don't get they're not invested. They work hand to mouth. They live hand to mouth. They don't have very many investments. The lack of a savings doesn't hurt them when the market goes to hell. Now, and the only way to get them into savings is to raise their incomes, which means a higher minimum wage and, again, a higher child tax credit. Trump raised the child tax credit, but he got rid of the child exemption, so it's a wash as far as his economic policy. He didn't really benefit the lower classes as much as he could have. He's got to raise those rates in tax negotiations. I hope they let me in the door, because if I bring up that fact, it might. I've got to knock on the door first. That's the problem. I don't knock on the door enough. There's a way to do long-term stabilization on the situation, and if they do, this is the entree to real reform. He's upsetting the system. He promised to. He promised his voters to. His voters aren't mainly in the top 20%. Some of them are. The donors are, but some of the donors may say, to hell with it. So, we'll see. The donors like Coke, they don't mind an industrial policy that keeps the crap out. And the ones who are, the whiz kids, this is going to hurt the economies of Suffolk County and to some extent the economies of Silicon Valley. But yeah, I don't think Trump cares about these people. They don't vote for him. So, he's targeting the way people wanted him to. So don't count on a collapse in the economy, because we have liquidity barriers now because of Dodd-Frank. So if it starts affecting the real economy, the Federal Reserve has the power to bring back essential institutions, but it's going to let the non-essentials, screw themselves. So, yeah. If you like neoliberalism, you hate what's going on now. If you don't like neoliberalism, well, your side just won. So, and Trump doesn't like neoliberalism. So, things have gotten interesting, but are they worse? In the short term, prices are going to go up. In the long term, maybe not so much. So, and again, we're exploiting the world. Trump is stopping the exploitation of the world through tariffs. So, again, his voters may not be losing their wealth because they don't have any. So, there's that. So we'll see how this shakes out in the long run with grocery prices. So, because I like my cherries cheap from Chile. Enough said. Have a good day.